"Oh no, I forgot my wallet," my friend always says, refusing to pay when they're with me. I was troubled by her behavior, but my husband came up with a plan. I decided to act on it and took her out. "I forgot to buy something," we said, and left the place. We then put our plan into action. Will it work? I wonder. I'm Addison, and I'm 34 years old. I currently work part-time. My husband, Johnny, earns a decent living. We live comfortably raising our 4-year-old son, Cliff. We used to live in an apartment but moved into a house after saving some money. That's when I met Susanna, a young mom in the neighborhood. She seems to be raising her husband's stepchild. I felt for Susanna and wanted to befriend her, but Susanna turned out to be quite a character. We had just moved in and didn't know her true nature, so we opened our hearts to Susanna easily. Today, after my son's gym class for kids, a regular activity held at the local gym to get kids moving, I decided to join in, hoping to fit into the new area quickly. It was a success, and I made friends with other local moms who invited me to lunch. The lunch was just sandwiches and coffee at a cafe near the gym. Then Susanna showed up as if she had sniffed us out. "Oh, Addison, what a coincidence. Are you here for a tea party?" she exclaimed loudly, rushing over. We all looked at Susanna with mixed feelings. Still, she joined us unbothered and ordered coffee. We had a bad feeling, but couldn't outright reject her, so we ended up having lunch with Susanna. As the lunch was wrapping up, we were about to split the bill. Then Susanna said, "I just happened to be here, so I don't need to pay, right?" We all exchanged looks, uttering, "What?" It was clear that Susanna's bad habit was kicking in. "Besides, you all ordered those dishes, not me. It's weird for me to pay," she insisted. We sighed at Susanna's logic. She always tries to find a reason to avoid paying. "But Susanna, you ate too, and you ordered coffee," I replied. "Then Addison, you can cover for me. I didn't plan to be here today and didn't bring any money. I just stumbled upon you guys," she said. We thought she shouldn't have joined if that was the case, though we didn't say it out loud. I refused, but Susanna insisted stubbornly. "I'll pay back later. Come on, Addison, you're older and we're neighbors. Let's be good neighbors." "So what? What's that supposed to mean?" I wanted to retort, but Susanna began her usual tantrums and stubbornly refused to pay. I didn't want this to drag on and trouble others, so I reluctantly agreed to her promise and paid for the both of us. I received sympathetic looks from those around us. Feeling awkward, I sighed yet again. This has been Susanna's behavior since I moved here. The next day I was at Susanna's house. I came to get the money back from yesterday. I visited her house to prevent her from claiming she didn't have her wallet. When I asked for the money, Susanna made a blatantly displeased face. "Really? Over just $10? Did you come all this way just for that? Addison, you're surprisingly petty," she said, clearly unwilling to pay. I had suspected this might happen. After all, Susanna had a history of not repaying me multiple times before. "You said that before and you never paid me back. You currently owe me over $100. "Please, enough is enough," I said a bit angrily. Susanna frowned even more, glaring at me like a petulant child, but I was determined not to give in today. Susanna's misdeeds were many. When I was driving to work, she would appear out of nowhere asking for a ride to the station. During shopping trips, she often avoided paying. When I confronted her, she would sulk like a child, acting as if I was the one in the wrong. "Johnny makes good money, right? But you, Addison, are so tight with money," she would say, which was incredibly frustrating. I could think of her as a sweet sister if only she was normal in conversations. As I stood there visibly annoyed, Susanna finally gave in, took out her wallet, and paid for yesterday's lunch. I accepted it, relieved for the moment. However, a few days later, Susanna held a grudge and said, "Hey, can you take me shopping? I want to go to this wholesale store that opened a bit far away. What do you say we go the day after tomorrow?" She went on with her plan, so I made up an excuse to decline. Then Susanna suddenly turned to Cliff, who was playing nearby, and asked in a sweet voice, "Hey, can I come shopping with you?" "Sure," Cliff replied. Seeing this, Susanna looked triumphantly at me. "Cliff is so kind, unlike you, Addison. It's terrible you won't even go shopping with me," she said. Faced with her victim-like plea, I couldn't help feeling irritated. Then Johnny came by. Thinking she could win him over, Susanna greeted him cheerfully and started talking about the shopping trip. I usually confide in Johnny about Susanna's selfishness, so I hoped he wouldn't be fooled and would refuse. But sure, why not? Johnny easily agreed. I was stunned by his response, and, feeling awkward to oppose alone, I reluctantly agreed. Pleased, Susanna happily left. After she was gone, I glared at Johnny. "Don't look at me like that," he said. "But it's Susanna. She'll surely forget her wallet and make us pay, like usual," I retorted. Johnny seemed unfazed, even though I thought he understood my concern. Feeling dissatisfied, I was about to complain more when Johnny said with a laugh, "I have a good idea." Curious, I listened to his plan and decided to go along with it. On the day of the shopping trip, Susanna hurried into the car before us. "Did you forget anything? Like your wallet?" she asked. "You too," I replied briefly, telling Johnny to start the car. We had left Cliff with my parents, and for some reason, Susanna's son was also left with them. I'm not going to comment on that. Soon we arrived at the wholesale store. Being new, it was super crowded. After about an hour of searching, we finally found a parking spot and entered the store, which was even more crowded inside. I kept our plan in mind. However, the plan wouldn't be necessary if Susanna actually paid for herself. "Look at this. Being a new store, they have so many kinds of food," Susanna exclaimed, filling her cart with large bags. "Don't mix your stuff with mine. Use your own cart," I advised. "We'll sort it out later," she dismissed. Despite my advice, my cart kept filling up with items. I regretted bringing a cart as I only wanted 2 or 3 things. She's not even looking at the prices. Guess she never intends to pay for herself, I thought. Unaware of our complaints, Susanna continued to scrutinize the products. Her audacity knew no bounds, and when it was time to pay, Susanna's bad habits started again. Uh-oh, that's true, I thought. Johnny and I exchanged worried glances. Susanna was rummaging through her purse, tilting her head as if waiting for us to ask what was wrong. When we didn't immediately respond, she couldn't contain herself any longer and loudly proclaimed, "Oops, I forgot my wallet." Johnny and I decided to put our plan into action. "Oh, I forgot to buy something," Johnny exclaimed while we were in line. I went along with him, saying, "Oh, that's right," agreeing with him. Susanna, who had been searching her purse, turned to us. "Could you go grab it?" "Oh, but you might not know where it is," she said. "I remember where it is." "Susanna, can you watch the cart while we go back?" I said, pushing the cart towards her. Susanna reflexively took it. "Huh?" she asked. "We'll be back before our turn comes." "You sure? I don't have my wallet, remember?" Susanna said, reluctantly agreeing to keep waiting in line. Johnny and I shared a knowing smile, making sure Susanna didn't see. Then we hid behind shelves and people, keeping an eye on Susanna. It seemed our plan was working. How long will she wait? Given the amount of things she has in the cart, she won't be able to say she doesn't need them when her turn comes. We chuckled mischievously to each other. Susanna always relied on my wallet. There were times when she made up an excuse and left early if I said I wouldn't pay. Remembering this, Johnny suggested we do the same to her. However, we agreed that if Susanna showed any intention of paying, we would let it go this time. But as expected, as soon as she got in line, she announced she had forgotten her wallet, probably hoping we would pay for her. I could easily guess this would happen, especially since she seemed to hold a grudge over the money from the last lunch. Sensing that we weren't coming back, Susanna began to look around anxiously. She stayed in line, probably thinking of what to do if we returned. Seeing the line move forward, Johnny and I decided to proceed with the next phase of our plan. "Sorry, Susanna. My mom just called with an urgent errand. You know she's watching her kids and she can't leave the house right now, so we have to head back home." I called Susanna and told her this. Susanna's voice showed her shock and panic. Wait. What about payment? I forgot my wallet too. Hurry back and pay before you go." "We're in an age where you can pay with your phone, right? Figure something out. Besides, most of that shopping is yours. If you don't want to pay for our few items, just take them out of the cart. It should be quick since we only had 2 or 3 things." Susanna's voice grew more irritated. "I don't have any way to pay. Come back now or at least leave Johnny here." Johnny, grabbing my phone, spoke in an exasperated tone. I have to help with the heavy lifting. Sorry, but you'll have to take a cab back. It's urgent. Or maybe get your husband Phil to pick you up. Susanna was at a loss for words. We knew Susanna was wary of Phil, having heard from other local mom friends who had been victims of her antics that Phil had once scolded her sharply. Still, she hadn't learned and continued her schemes behind Phil's back. That's the situation. If you're not sure how to use your phone to pay, ask the staff. They should be able to explain it since that register accepts it, I said. Susanna clenched her teeth. Did you set me up? Of course not. Isn't it normal to pay for your own things? Why would I set you up? Susanna fell silent, visibly frustrated. We ended the call with her and drove off, imagining Susanna causing a scene at the register, and shared a laugh. The next day, Susanna showed up at my house, clearly angry about yesterday. I reluctantly appeared at the entrance after repeated doorbell rings. There stood Susanna, her face red with anger. That was awful to leave me there. I want compensation, she demanded. I raised an eyebrow at her demand. Then she started ranting about the previous day. I panicked so much. You need to pay me double what you owe. Did you pay for our items too? I asked. Of course not. Why would I pay for your things? Susanna was furious, but seemed unaware of the absurdity of her words. You only paid for your own shopping. Why are you so angry? I feigned ignorance. Susanna exploded. I was deeply hurt being left behind. That's emotional distress. You should pay for the shopping, the taxi, and the damages. After all, you invited me to shop. I frowned at her unreasonable words, especially since she twisted the story to make it look like we invited her. Feeling ridiculous for even engaging in this conversation, I was astounded by her audacity. Unfazed by my reaction, Susanna threatened, If you don't pay, I'll tell the neighbors how awful you are. Think about what will happen to your fancy house. Pay up if you don't want that. Faced with Susanna's unreasonable behavior, I felt it was time to reconsider our relationship. Just then, a familiar voice was heard. Hearing it, Susanna's face turned pale, and she spun around. Standing there were Johnny and Phil, chatting and walking together. What? How come? Susanna exclaimed. Oh, Johnny and Phil went fishing today. Seems like they're back, I said. I didn't know that, she yelled, but it was none of my business. Phil, hearing the commotion at the entrance, looked puzzled. What's going on? Oh, about yesterday, I began, when Johnny responded with, Oh, as he glared at Susanna with a look of understanding. Phil, sensing something was off, asked, What happened? Johnny explained about going to the wholesale store with Susanna and having to leave early for an urgent matter. Unfortunately, we ended up not being able to buy anything, Johnny said with a laugh. That's unfortunate, Phil responded with a smile. Then he turned to Susanna. So, what about it? He asked. Susanna, losing her previous assertiveness, stammered, trying to find a response. I told Phil about what Susanna had said to me. She seemed really hurt. I'm truly sorry, but asking for compensation and shopping money is a bit much. At this, Susanna's face turned blue. What are you talking about? She shouted. It's not like that. Huh? But isn't that why you came today? Was there another reason? Caught off guard, Susanna fell silent, her frustration evident. Phil frowned, sensing something amiss. Susanna looked shocked at Phil's reaction and turned to me for help, but I had no obligation to assist her. We won't leave you behind next time. Let's go shopping together again, okay? I said with a wry smile. Susanna left hastily, pale-faced. Afterwards, Phil scolded Susanna again. This was the second time something like this happened, and so his anger was understandable. He had actually investigated Susanna's misdeeds himself. Many local mom friends came forward with complaints, fueling Phil's anger. He confronted Susanna about why she was exploiting others. Under pressure, Susanna confessed to spending household money on designer purses and other luxuries. Having squandered the living expenses, she had been mooching off us mom friends to make ends meet. Hearing this, Phil was furious. Susanna had spent a significant amount, leading to discussions of divorce. Desperate not to divorce, Susanna pleaded with Phil, but he felt betrayed and kicked her out for the sake of their child. Eventually, they got divorced. Susanna returned to her family's home to help with farming. With the troublesome mom friend gone, the neighborhood is now very peaceful. We still keep in touch with Phil, though, and often lend him a hand.